Okay, this is a grade 8 16 for a review of grade 7 material, as well as the material we learned in integer multiplication division, as well as the newest concept of multiplying a fraction by a whole number. So if you want to try these, if it's later on, you can press pause right now and try these questions. If you've already done them, you've probably forgotten the answers anyway, so press pause, try the questions, and then watch the rest of the video to see what the solutions are. So our first question is 2.375 take away 1.48. Okay, so if we take subtraction without a calculator, we can take our first number, line up the decimals, and subtract them. Now, if you're missing place values, we said that you can put a 0 there to help you see the place values a little bit better. 5 take away 0 is 5. 7 take away 8 you can't do, so you borrow. 17 take away 8 you can do, that's 9. 2 take away 4 you can't do, so you borrow. And 12 take away 4 is 8. 1 take away 1 is 0. So your answer is 0.895. The second question gives you a Cartesian plane and asks you to tell the coordinates of each of them. So A, this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. And where would the A point be? Well, we need ordered pair for this. So when you learned about ordered pairs, you learned that your first coordinate is your x and your second one is your y. This is a positive 1, this is a positive 2, this is a positive 3. This is a negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3 on your x-axis. This is a positive 1 on your y, your positive 2 on your y, and a positive 3 on your y, and a negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. So A is located above the positive 2 on the x-axis, so therefore it is a positive 2 on the x, and it is located right of the positive 1. So A's location is positive 2, positive 1. B's ordered pair is underneath the positive 2 on the x-axis and right of the negative 2 on the y-axis. C is above the negative 3 on your x-axis and right or left of the positive 3 on your y. And finally, D is below 0 on the x-axis and it is on negative 3 on the y. So those are the locations of the 4 ordered pairs. Your second one simply says, what do you call two lines that meet at 90 degrees? And the word is called perpendicular. So perpendicular is spelled just how it sounds. Perpendicular. The next question gives you 1 3/4 plus 1 5/12. There are two ways to do it. The first way would be to simply add your whole numbers and then add your fractional parts and then combine the two at the end. The second way is to simply convert both into an improper fraction and then find your common denominator. I prefer this way only because when you do subtraction in mixed fractions, it works for it as well. You're not trying to remember two ways to solve it. You just remember one way. Your common denominator would be 12. The equivalent fraction to 7/4 is 21 over 12. And a step most people forget to do is add the numerators and keep the denominators, giving you 38/12, which is 3. That's 36. And 2/12, which in lowest terms is 3. And 1/6. If you did it the other way, you ended up getting 1 plus 1 is 2. You added your fraction parts to get 14/12 or 1 2/12, which is 1 1/6. And when you put 2 and 1/6 together, you ended up with the same answer as 3 1/6. Our next question is a string of 3 fractions. The first thing you got to do is find your common denominator. Now remember, what you learned how to do before was to find the common denominator. You can find a multiple that both 4, 10, and 5 share. You probably don't need to do this anymore because when you first did it, you realize that the first multiples, that's 10, 15, and 20, the first multiple they share is 20, and therefore that would be the common denominator you use. So you write your equivalent expression using 20 as your denominator. Here you multiplied by 5 to get 20, so you have to multiply the numerator by 5 to create an equivalent fraction of 15/20. Here you multiply 10 by 2 to get 20, so you multiply your numerator by 2 to get an equivalent fraction of 18/20. And here you multiply by 4 to get 20, so you multiply the numerator by 4 to get 4/20. Now, Because your denominators are the same and you're just dealing with addition and subtraction, you technically could keep the denominator, add those two parts, and subtract this part. So 15 plus 18 is 33. And 33 take away 4 is 29, which makes your answer 2 and 9/20. Oops, I mean 1 and 9/20, not 2 and 9/20. Now this question apparently caused the most problems because most people forget how to get probability. So what this really says is the following. So what this essentially says is this P stands for what is the probability of. The first one means a 1 on the first event or the first spinner, and the second one means a 1 on the second spinner. So what you learn to do in grade 7 is make one of two things. You can either make a tree diagram or you can make a table. Since we're dealing with two events, I'm going to make my table. Up top here, I'm going to put my first event, which is either a 1 or a 2. And down the left-hand side, I'm going to put my second event, which is a 1, 2, or a 3. And when I do so, I create this sample space of all the possible outcomes. And by looking at that, I see 6 blanks, so I know that there are 6 possible outcomes. And probability, we learned, was favorable outcomes, A-B-L-E, favorable outcomes divided by possible outcomes. So there are 6 possible outcomes, and the only one which is a 1, 1 is that square right there, a 1 in the first and a 1 in the second. So therefore, as a fraction, it's 1 out of 6. As a decimal, if I took my calculator, 1 divided by 6 is 0.16 repeating, which is approximately 17% chance, right? Or 16 2/3% or 16.6 repeating percent. So the probability of spinning a 1, 1 with those two spinners is roughly 17%. So the next question gives you a circle. And the circle gives you a diameter. And the question is, what is the area and the circumference? For area, we learned that it was, in grade 7, you said pi multiplied by r multiplied by r. Or what we said this year was it's pi r squared. And circumference is simply pi multiplied by the diameter, or as we said this year, pi d, because you don't need multiplication symbols anymore. So for the first one, area equals pi times radius squared. So if the diameter is 12, that means my radius is 6 meters. So pi, we said because you don't have calculators, just use 3 for pi. And the radius is 6 squared. Now over here, if I use pi times the radius squared, I get 3 times 6 times 6. Both work. But it's important that you know that 6 squared is the first thing you do. So 6 squared is 36, so bed mass means I do that first. It's not 12, it's 36. And 3 times 36 is 108. So therefore, the area is approximately equal to 108. Now if you use 3.14 instead of that, you get 3.14 times 36, which is, I don't know, 113 something, right? If you use the pi button, you got something even closer, but it's okay to use 3 if you don't need to be accurate. In the second question, I'm going to use 3 as pi, and the diameter is 12. So all we have to do is take pi times diameter, or 3 times 12, which is 36 meters for your circumference, or the distance around the edge. Your next question is a grade 8 question. It's a subtraction question with a division thrown in. So we said if you have this, this would be the same thing as taking -5 take away -8 in brackets, and then taking that answer and dividing by -2. These are the same thing, but we'll do it in the black ink rather than the red ink. So 5 take away -8. I hate doing subtraction, so I'm going to keep flip change. 5 negatives and 8 positives is 3 positives. And positive 3 divided by 2 is 1.5 or 1.5. And a positive divided by a negative, opposite signs, negative answer. So your answer is -1.5. Same thing here. You would have got 3 divided by -2, which is -1.5. Your next question is given a list of 10 numbers, find the mean, median, and mode. So for mean, we mean the average. And in order to calculate the average, you have to add them all together. So the mean means the average. So what we want to do here is we're going to calculate. So in order to calculate the mean, we need to add them all together and divide by the number of terms. So I'm going to add these up. I got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 91, 100. So when you add them all together, you get 100. And 100 divided by 10 terms would be a mean, thank you, of 10. Thank you, Davia. Now the median means the middle number, so we're going to rearrange these in order. So 4, 5, 7. Sorry, I got 5 twice, don't I? 4, 5, 5, 7, 9, 10, 10, 12, 18, and 20. The middle number is 9 and 10, which we take the average of. So 9 plus 10 over 2 is 19 over 2, which is 9.5. So the median, or the middle number, is 9.5. And your mode, there are two modes. 10 appears twice, and so does the number 5. So your mode is both 10 and 5. Your next question is your algebra question, 2x minus 7 equals 1. So in grade 7, you learned that there are different parts. There is a constant and there is a coefficient. When you have an equation that has both of those, the first thing you should get rid of is your constant by applying opposite operations. So you're going to add 7 to both sides. When you do that, you get 2x equals 8. And since this says 2 times x equals 8, you're going to divide both sides by 2. Opposite operation to multiplying by 2, and you get x equals 4. Next question. Again, it's algebra. And what it says is the fifth of x minus 3 is equal to negative 5. So again, this is your constant here. So we're going to get rid of that first by adding 3 to both sides. I get a fifth of x is equal to. Now look here. This was never done in grade 7 because you would have never had on one side a negative 2 answer. And the reason why you would never have that is because right now I'm going to multiply both sides by 5 to get rid of x divided by 5. And when I multiply this side by 5, I get x. But this right here, negative 2 times 5, is not a grade 7 outcome. It's a grade 8 outcome. So because it is, the value of x will be negative 10. And your next question is a area and perimeter of a triangle. So again, area, it's base times height, usually sometimes like this, divided by 2. But how I like to write the formula for area, it's area equals base times height divided by 2. Your base here is 10. Your height here is 8 divided by 2. 80 divided by 2 equals 40. Now, since it didn't say what the length of it was, whether it was meters or centimeters or inches, we put units. So the area is 40 units squared. And some people said, I don't know how to get the perimeter. Well, what's the perimeter mean? It means the distance on the way of the outside. So 8 plus 12 is 20, plus 10 more is 30 units in terms of the perimeter, the distance around the outside. Your next question is 4/5 times 3, which is the 6.1 unit that we just finished. So if I think about it from a drawing perspective, if I took 4/5, there's 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, and if I tripled it, how many fifths would I have in total? Well, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I would have 12 fifths, which is equal to 2 and 2/5. And your second last question, what is the name of these? So two lines that meet at 90 degrees are called perpendicular. Two lines that are across from each other and will never touch are called parallel. Parallel. Something like that. Oh well, spelling's not my best thing. And your last question is your addition and subtraction of fractions. I'm going to change them all into improper. So 11 fifths plus 15 quarters take away 1/20th. Make your equivalent fractions. This one won't change. This one over here, if I multiply by 5, you get 20. Multiply this by 5, you get 75/20ths. And so multiply this by 4 and this by 4, you get 44/20ths. So 44/20ths. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep my denominator, and I'm going to operationally solve my numerators. That's going to be 10, 50, 120. 120 take away 1 is 119. So 119 over 20 will be 5 and 19/20ths.